Hey, Chris.
Hey Sam, thank you for joining me today. You've been out on the road a lot.
Yeah, man, just trying to play music with my friends and get in front of people who care about it as much as we do, which
Awesome.
seems to be happening left and right. It's awesome.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
the
It
luckiest.
seems like people are really digging what you're laying down right now, and that things are moving in a nice direction.
Yeah, man, we're just really grateful to have passion for some music that is truly timeless, and we kind of get to play whatever we want because we the catalog is so deep, and everybody who weaves in and out of the project has great original music to offer, but we all grew up on this catalog of music that my dad and Jerry made together, and have a lot of love and reverence for that stuff, but everybody's sort of their own voice. So, nobody's trying to sound like Dog and Jerry, but we do go out on stage with, the spirit of what those guys were doing in mind every time. So, yeah, it's been a
Absolutely.
blessing, man. Just getting to share space with all these folks around the country who remember that stuff or grew up on it as well. And it's like across a bunch of generations and all different walks of different kind of folks love this stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah. It really is special. It's like you said, timeless in a lot of ways. I think there's new generations that are coming to the music now, and that's great. That's about, kind of living on in a special way.
definitely, definitely.
Well, cool. Well, I may use a little of that. What I was hoping to do is just have a kind of a convo now, quick convo, make sure you feel
Yeah,
good about everything logistically, and then just, record another, 10 minutes or so of
man.
conversation that we can use to promo.
Whatever's
Um,
clever.
okay, all right. We're really psyched for your set. I think I'm in touch with everybody, so logistics and rooming and
Yeah, I
everything
really
taken
appreciate the
care of.
flexibility on that. And we're just super grateful to you guys. It's a really special band of folks who are coming from really across the country, but it's like a collective of cats who are mostly Californians because Logan and I live in Nashville now. The only non-Californian in the band will be Chris English, but his
Okay.
nickname is Hollywood, so he's an honorary Californian.
He's an
Um,
honorary Californian.
but we'll
You
have
know,
Logan Ledger and Mike Witcher and Chad Manning and myself and Jesse Appleman.
that's great. I'm really excited for that. I don't know if Logan that told you the story, but we were at South by Southwest and at the boot store, and I ran into him. I was like, "Hey, you're Logan, and you're playing at Cosmico,"
He
and
did
that
tell
was the
me
first
that.
time we ever met in person. But it was cosmic to run into him at South by, and then we went and saw one of his sets. I love his new record. I love kind of the Nashville country sound with a record about California, and he's returning to the Golden State, returning to his North Bay roots as well. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. And it's not the contemporary Nashville sound that you would associate with the current country music landscape. It's the good one.
It's
You know, the that Nashville country sound frozen in time and in 1963.
I get like Hank Williams Jr. I get, there's a lot of stuff coming off his sound to me. And sorry,
I,
Hank Williams Sr. Hank Williams
yeah,
Sr.
yeah, yeah.
That's
I
that's
was
what I
gonna
meant.
say I
Yeah.
get more his dad and
Yeah.
Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and Hank Snow and Ernest Tubb, George
Yeah.
Jones. I
George
mean,
Jones for sure.
Roy
George Jones.
Orbison.
Yeah.
Logan is truly one of my favorite singers on the planet and one of my favorite people. And we actually grew up together in Mill Valley, and we went to preschool and high school together.
That's amazing, really. And
Yep.
and so you guys have, and you've been friends all this while. How did you guys both, end up on the music track? I mean, I've got a sense of your youth and your upbringing, but you guys,
Yeah.
were you compatriots, getting into the music world?
So it's very interesting. We were always friends. I actually drove carpool in high school, and I've always loved Logan, and we've always been buds. But we were sort of like in different social circles in high school. And we're both kind of in our own ways, like shy. And he was shy in high school, and I didn't even realize that he was learning how to flat pick the guitar like Clarence White and learning how to sing these tunes and developing this deep passion for this stuff. I would just see him at like bluegrass experience gigs, like my dad's shows that I was playing, and here would be my buddy from high school come up to the merch table with his family. I just figured that he dug the music, but I didn't realize like I mean, he wouldn't even let on when we would be listening to music in the car that he was like practicing at home or anything like that. I don't think he ever, um, offered to pick or expressed a desire to get together to play music while we were actually in high school. But then he went to Columbia for college, and I went to Berkeley and really just fucked off and smoke weed and pick tunes with my buddies. And after that experience, moved to Nashville when I was about one, or 22. And he moved to Nashville right around the same time. And that's when we started playing music together. So, he had had his college experience. I think he studied ethnomusicology. He's a genius. I love Logan, and he's like one of the most brilliant people I know. He'd really hate me calling him a genius, but I truly feel he's just a brilliant human. I have a lot of brilliant friends, and he's one of them. But he, just studied country music and bluegrass, early country music, and the best parts of bluegrass very deeply and closely in high school and college, and emerged, with his own sound. And he writes songs like they're completely his, fully individuated. They feel like his own thing, but they feel like they come from a different era, frankly better era of country music.
It's
like
true.
like
Yeah.
like some of my other favorite contemporary country artists, because the genres are all just really just constructs, used by marketing people to sell music. Like music
Right.
is just music. Logan sounds
Yeah.
like Logan. We all are just our our unabashed selves, hopefully. But that's just a confluence of all the influences, that you take in when you're a developing musician. So that's just you are a sum of all of those influences ultimately, and that is your individuality. And he has his own thing going, and it's a lot of parts from a lot of my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah. The music is just music. I think, it is interesting, and particularly as we're working on marketing Cosmico and people are asking us about, genre, and that, the way I think about it is what we're trying to do here is bring together music that we love. And one of the connections that runs through the artists that are performing at Cosmico and that will be performing is this ability to create a connection with the audience, and the music is a tool to move people, to create connection, to bring kind of positivity into people's lives. I'd love to, just have you, tell us what music, means to you in performance, what growing up with your dad and the music that he played, means, and how that kind of relates to connection and community and exchanging energy with the audience.
Well, basically every good thing that's ever happened to me in my life has been because of music. And, it's brought me all kinds of friendships and all kinds of experiences and memories, which is really, that's all we have, you know. Material things are kind of invalid in my experience. And, I have a network of friends who, where music is really the thread that weaves through it all. I have friends who aren't musicians, but they're drawn, we're drawn together because of music in some way, shape, or form. And it's just opened a lot of doors for me in my life, and that's not lost on me. And I'm super grateful for that. And I've had this amazing opportunity in life, and people have given me this sort of treatment. And my privilege is, it all comes from music. It's not a monetary privilege. It's a musical one. And I'm super lucky for that. And yeah, just as I get older and that weighs on me more, I just feel um, just obliged, not obligated, but just obliged to play this music for folks. Just happy to do it, and grateful for the opportunity that playing all different kinds of music has afforded me in my life. But to just have a little control over the situation, to be able to write a set list full of my favorite music for some of my favorite people to play every night is just a dream. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity. I'm super excited to come to Mendocino and play for the folks in one of my favorite parts of the world, just, about an hour from where I grew up in Mill Valley. And yeah, it's just a place that feels and looks and smells like that music.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to bring some folks together who really care about that stuff, to bring their own into that individuality to the catalog. And thanks for putting us up and bringing us all together.
It's gonna be special. If you wouldn't mind, I think that one of the things that our hope is, and I think is happening right now through Cosmico, but as I'm watching, your tour, and all the content you guys put up as you're out there, I think the music that we're talking about that's so important to so many people is reaching a new generation. And would you mind just kind of giving a little background about, dog music, about the relationship between, Jerry and your father, David Grisman, for people that don't know the full history? I think it would be a treat to kind of hear it from you.
Yeah, totally. Well, you know, my perspective is unique, like anyone's would be. But yeah, I was lucky enough to grow up in Mill Valley in a house where my dad had a recording studio in the basement, and he had a lot of friends come through to make music. And one of the friends who came the most often, because he also lived in Mill Valley, was Jerry Garcia. And they had a 30-year musical friendship that started in the early 60s when they met each other at a bluegrass festival in Sunset Park in Pennsylvania, or in Maryland, actually. I I recently went there. It's not exceptional anymore. There's no evidence that there ever was a stage or anything like that. And there's just a bunch of no trespassing signs and a little placard that says that Bill Monroe played there one time. But
Huh.
I'm sure he played there more than once. Anyways, they met on a similar pilgrimage of sorts where, Jerry drove from the West Coast with his buddy Sandy Rothman, and my dad um, made it with some friends from the East Coast down to this bluegrass festival to go see some of these first generation pioneers of bluegrass music. I forget who exactly was on the bill at that particular festival, but I know that Bill Monroe was there, and maybe Jim and Jesse or the Osborne brothers, or bands of that caliber and that nature would be, Jimmy. You can go see Jimmy Martin and the Sunny Mountain Boys, and that's the kind of music, authentic music that those guys were both thirsting for in their early years as musicians. And so they connected in the parking lot, jammed together, and hit it off and developed a friendship. And my dad traveled out to the West Coast in that era, and this was in a time where it was before the Grateful Dead existed, and he met some of his other core friends like Herb Peterson and Eric Thompson, and Jody Stecker was an East Coast guy, but he moved out to the West Coast. And there's all these cats who were a part of Jerry's early musical path and my dad's early musical path. And Herb Peterson's the guy who wrote Old Train, which is one of my favorite bluegrass
Oh,
tune and
wow.
train songs of all time. But, my dad and him and Eric Thompson, I believe, were in a band called the Smoky Grass Boys as soon as my dad moved out west. But, you know, my dad actually got the Grateful Dead their first bit of national publicity before they were called the Grateful Dead. They were called the Warlocks at that point. He had made one of those trips out to the West Coast and made it back to the East Coast and was giving an interview for a friend who worked for Sing Out magazine, which was kind of like a folk and pop like magazine, I guess. And they asked him about his trip to San Francisco, and he said that his friend Jerry Garcia had this cool new band called the Warlocks. It was kind of a blues band with this cat pig pen, you know.
So great
and
that.
and then when my dad moved out west, he had stayed in touch with Jerry, and they were still buds, and got invited to a softball game, and it was between the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane. And I don't remember if he played or not, but they probably needed him because why else would you invite somebody to a softball game unless you're trying to get 9 cats on each team or whatever. But at that game, they invited him to, the studio to do a little recording, and that happened to be the session for American Beauty, and they had him play on Ripple in Front of the Devil, which are two of my favorite songs and two songs that I grew up hearing my dad and Jerry play together. But you know, they're core parts of that Grateful Dead catalog, and my dad is a pretty pure acoustician, and my dad and Jerry's friendship was really way outside the world of the Grateful Dead. And they had a bluegrass band together in the early 70s called Old and the Way with Peter Rowan and Vassar Clements and John Kahn. And John Hartford played fiddle in the band for a time, and so did Richard Green. But then their bluegrass icon and hero, Vassar, came and joined the picture for all of 1973 or most of it into 74. And they really didn't play a ton because my dad and Peter had played with Bill Monroe and my dad had played with Red Allen. And that was about a decade before. And my dad kind of felt like, hey, man, I already played really serious bluegrass music. Like Vassar's really the only one on this stage who's really getting the bluegrass thing done to the level that, to my standards. And Jerry just didn't want any part of anything that was a bad vibe. And so he would rather have the friendship, And so the band just stopped existing pretty much because Jerry thought it was pretty much my dad and Peter's thing. And my dad was kind of like, well, it's your thing because all the people show up because of you, you know. My, anyways, that was a kind of a short-lived thing, and Jerry went, the Grateful Dead got really successful, and Jerry kind of went on his own path for about a decade there, and they rekindled their friendship in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was born in 1990, and my dad had just built this recording studio in our house, and Jerry started to come over all the time to work on tunes that they used to play together, or tunes that they both loved, or they wrote a few tunes together in that period, and they were playing at the Warfield, and mostly just playing in the living room and down in the studio and getting inspired and just being buds. And that is really the spirit that inspired me to become a musician, and to play music with my friends and to work on music and practice music and have a musical life. Um, and yeah, I just feel like the luckiest person because that's truly my favorite music. And it's also the soundtrack to some of my earliest memories, and it was all recorded in the house I was growing up in. And so it just has this very special place for me. Um, and it's really inspiring to see that other people have a connection to it as well. And I have a lot of my core musical friends also grew up on Not for Kids Only and the first Garcia Grisman record and Shady Grove and also Doc and Dog and dog music, the first Quintet record and Quintet 80 and Hot Dog and Dog 90 and all these albums full of incredible instrumental music, which is also sort of, if you're enough of a deadhead, you might have discovered dog music. But if you're enough of a dog head, you're probably a deadhead as well. I've met folks who have come to both musics through both avenues. And I mean, obviously there's a lot more deadheads out there and a lot more folks who might have come to acoustic music or dog music through the Grateful Dead, and that's one of the most beautiful things about the Grateful Dead is how much great other music they've made folks aware of. They really are just a sort of a mouthpiece for all of the great American music that has come before them, you know, and they've been gracious stewards of that music for a long time. And my dad has had a similar role in the acoustic landscape, just curating musical experience for a broader audience and hipping his audience and other, the greater musical audience or world to sort of hip, obscure music, a lot of it mandolin driven. But, Jerry and him had a shared love of the Argentinian jazz guitar player Oscar Aleman, who is actually where Jerry got Russian Lullaby from. And my dad ended up, producing a record of his old 45s and such and putting that out for the first time in America and just, turning his audience onto this music that shaped him and Jerry as musicians. And that's something that we strive to do in every set. We like to play some of our own music and some of the music that we got from my dad and Jerry, but we also like to play music from our other influences, and our other heroes, just in the spirit of loving music and caring enough about music to work on it and try to deliver a song well and play it better the next time and so on and so forth.
Yep. Well, it's going to be a special Sunday afternoon, as you say, as they say, never miss a Sunday show.
I know
So,
I'm juiced.
yeah, we are too. Before I let you go, I was texting you about we're going to do something. Cosmico is a fundraiser. We run it as a nonprofit. One of the things we want to introduce this year is invite our headliners to nominate a charity or a cause that we can direct some of the proceeds to that's sort of near and dear to their heart. So I don't know if that you have somebody in mind or want to
Yeah,
introduce an organization.
that's a really beautiful thing that you guys are doing. And yeah, I happen to be wearing this shirt. It says Jay and Mary's Magic Beans on it. And I have some really dear family friends who are a special part of the history of dog music and really just the Bay Area music scene in general. But Jay and Mary Ceballos are my family friends who live in Grass Valley, and they were there the day I was born. They met my dad in 1976, and they're some of the most appreciative music fans in the history of music, and just sincere, beautiful, sort of back to the land, heart-centered hippies. And they've been on the same piece of property there for about 50 years. And J. Bob and Mary cultivate cannabis on the highest of levels, but it's a very mom and pop situation. And recently, Jay got hit with a cancer diagnosis, and he hasn't been doing as well as he has in the past physically, and is unable to support he and Mary in the way that he usually is. And so I've been raising money for him wherever I can. And we put on a little benefit in his community in Grass Valley a few weeks ago. So he would be the cause that I would nominate. Um, yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah, we would be happy to incorporate them and some support for his medical bills and whatnot. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
you
much.
know that they are very modest folks, and they, don't have a retirement plan, so to speak, and don't get Social Security or anything like that. So it's been quite the blow. But
Yeah,
we're doing everything we can for them, and he's hanging in there. And we did raise a bunch of bread the other week at the
that's great.
Chambers Project there in Grass Valley. There's some really special folks there.
Super cool. Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, I'm really looking forward to being together in person in a few weeks. I'm hoping you'll give us a little kind of intro, outro. Would you, be willing to give us
Yeah, man.
hey, I'm Sam Grisman, come catch me with my friends at Cosmico kind of thing. So I'll give you one more go. Thank you.
Hey, folks, Sam Grisman here. Can't wait to be with some of my favorite people in one of my favorite places up in Sonoma County for Cosmico Fest. See you there.
All right. Awesome.